Hello, everyone. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J. Moore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a very frustrated baker. Let's see if the mouth can work. Welcome for those of you tuning in live. Please feel free to post your questions in the comment sections. You'll see me from time to time turn to the side and check and see if there are any questions. Chi-Town's legendary chef Ina Pinkney, an inductee in the Chef's Hall of Fame as a legendary chef, is our guest today. From growing up in Brooklyn with childhood polio to dominating the Chicago breakfast scene with her recipes and Ina's restaurant is thoughtful, inspiring, and provocative. I can't talk right now. Ina, forgive me. Okay. Ina's story is a thoughtful, inspiring, and provocative one. She has garnered the title Breakfast Queen. Welcome, Ina.
I'm delighted to be with you today. I haven't seen you in years, and here we are able to do it this way.
Absolutely. So, Ina, what's on your plate today?
Well, you just said you were a frustrated baker, and that may be a good place to begin because I was about to start working for the last of the 21 jobs that I had in my life, 19 of which I got fired from. And I was about to start that. And I was walking along the street and I stepped on a piece of newspaper ad that was for a balloon delivery service. And I thought, isn't that interesting that for your birthday, people send you strippers, they send you singing telegrams, and they send you balloons, but nobody sends you a cake. So I thought, what would I need to do to make a surprise birthday cake delivery service happen? This was 1980. And I was up on the roof deck of our building, and I mentioned to people up there, my neighbors, what if a tuxedoed butler would bring you a cake and there was a sparkler on it, and then a parchment scroll done in calligraphy that said, "Happy birthday, Dara. We think you're the best friend that we ever had." And everybody went, "Oh my God, that is so good." So I went down to my apartment and wrote down all the things I thought I needed to do to make that happen. And the phone rang. "Hi, Ina. My name is Diane. I was up the roof. You don't know me. I got your number from the doorman. I'd like to order your service for Friday." And I had been reading the New York Times. This was Sunday now. And Craig Claiborne had a flourless chocolate cake, the very first one ever that I had ever seen. And I read the recipe and looked at the picture and said, I would eat that cake. Maybe this is the cake for my service. Now, I'm 37 years old. I had never separated eggs. I had never beaten egg whites. I had never melted chocolate. And I had enough eggs and chocolate in the house, and I tried to make this cake, and it was a disaster. So I went out and I bought enough ingredients for 3 more cakes. And I said, if I can't figure this out in 3 cakes, then I'm going to have to go buy one of these lousy layer cakes with Kirschwasser that was all over Chicago at the time. And I conquered it on the 3rd one. And I learned my lesson that day that if you can read, you can bake. And so we did the first one, and it spread like wildfire, the word. And I called this woman Diane. I said, you're the first. You have to tell me everything good, everything bad. She said, it was fun. It was exciting. It didn't embarrass anybody. It was quick. Nobody had stupid balloons to take home on the bus. And he had this beautiful scroll. But there is a problem. And I said, what's that? She goes, you don't charge enough. In 1980, it was $25. And that second, it went to $35. And then the first time somebody called me and said, how much is it with the cake? $45, I said. And then I was on my way. And I lost that job also.
So
that's how it started.
That's how it started. I did have that question. And just to reemphasize for the people that are tuning in, Ina has had a restaurant called Ina's in the West Loop in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And what was it, 22 years you had it?
I had 3 different ones, 3 different locations, and the last one was 13 years. So it's a total of 22 years complete, and 11 years at a bakery, because after that cake began a dessert catering business when that did not exist in 1980. And I taught myself how to bake. I had no idea how to do that.
Well, congratulations. I'm still a frustrated baker. And And even with friends like Nick Maggieri, whenever it's like, there's always, I read, I reread, I continue to read. I'm weighing everything now. I don't do cups.
Yeah.
And you just don't know. You're at the mercy of the oven and the weather, and sometimes that just plays a part.
Right.
All right. So you're known as the Breakfast Queen. That's your handle on Instagram, the Breakfast
Twitter.
Queen one.
Mm-hmm.
And Twitter, it's just Breakfast Queen. Why breakfast? How did Ina's become a breakfast restaurant?
So all the time that I was baking and going to my little storefront, which was not retail, just a kitchen, I would eat breakfast out with my husband. And in the 1980s, breakfast was grim. They would throw some eggs on a greasy griddle and make something, and French toast was silly, and coffee was insipid. And somewhere in the 9th year of eating out, I said, why can't anybody make a decent breakfast? And he said to me, so let me get this straight. Every day you go to that place and you play with butter, flour, sugar, and eggs. What are we eating? And I went, oh, we're eating butter, flour, sugar, and eggs. And I said, I'm going to make breakfast. I'm going to open a breakfast restaurant. Now, I loved hotel dining rooms for breakfast. I liked that they were quiet. I liked the napery. I liked the glass, beautiful glass with freshly squeezed orange juice. I loved it. And so I decided that between the diners and the hotel dining rooms, there was nothing. And I was going to make something. So I took that niche and I hit it as hard as I could. So my restaurant had all kinds of sound absorption. It had tablecloths. It had no music. I wanted us to be able to sit and have a conversation quietly over my food. And if I was making you nourishing food, it had to be in a nurturing environment. So the first time I saw somebody come in with a cell phone, we put up a sign that said no cell phones allowed. That was it. And people were furious because at the beginning, anybody with a cell phone felt entitled. And I went, no, this is my place. I get to make the rules. And I made the rules. And I have a lot of good stories about famous people coming in who could not use their phones. So it was a very different kind of a place where you would walk in the door and be greeted by everyone. I was at the door every morning when we unlocked it because my employees were my first guests. And how I greeted them set the tone for how they greeted the people.
Well, I think some of the things that you're talking about, I don't know how currently you're still doing it, but you, for the Chicago Tribune, I think once a month that you would do a column on a breakfast restaurant.
3 of them, I would choose 3.
3. Mm-hmm. And that would be in your column. So it wasn't just the cuisine.
No.
It was how they were greeted, even how the bathrooms were. Mm-hmm. And actually, not only did they get the publicity, but you gave them a tutorial on how to run their restaurant.
And I want you to know,
it better.
I never gave a bad review. If something was almost really good and it needed something, I would ask to see the manager or the owner, and I would introduce myself because they're never going to make my omelet differently than yours. And so breakfast was sort of an easy way to do that. And I would say, you know what? Everything about this experience was great, except your coffee is lousy. And your coffee does not match up to the quality and the depth of flavor of your food. I said, so please think about changing it because I'm not going to write about you until I know that you care enough to do that. And I said, I'll be back. I promise I'll be back. And I would go back, and if the coffee was good and better and I saw that they cared enough, I would write about them. But it wasn't a critical food review. It was a conversation with you about when I walked in, I saw the skylight, and I decided on this gray day it would be better to sit under the skylight, and I was brought this, and this is what it looked like, and this is what I ate. That's all I wanted. I wanted to tell people where they could go to have an experience worth their time and money. Because restaurants are the only retail situation on the planet where people walk in to give you their money. They don't come in and say, do you have those pancakes in blue? No. They come in to give you their money. And there's an incredible responsibility and obligation and honor in that. So I wanted to be sure that everybody felt like this was a good place to spend their money. Not only my place, but where I was sending them.
Right. And, I've written various columns, and if I've gone somewhere and the meal has been miserable, I just don't write about them.
Correct.
That doesn't prove anything. I'm not one to criticize. If it's something that I think that they should know about, then I'll call them afterwards and tell them this is a suggestion if they're open to it, etc.
I agree completely.
Let's talk breakfast. What makes a perfect pancake? What makes a perfect French toast?
So here's something. I think people love, you ask them what their favorite meal is, they're always going to say, oh, it's breakfast. And I think it's because when you sit down, you all get your food at the same time. When you're making breakfast at home, you're making sunny side up eggs for that one, and you have to go get the toast, and then somebody wants more coffee. And by the time you sit down, you have a cold breakfast. Breakfast, because it's the first meal of the day, people would come in and their blood sugar was low and they were a little bit cranky. And so we always made sure there was a bread basket on the table right away. When we took their order, we would be able to do an 18-minute ticket time, and nobody felt rushed because they were calm because they had something to eat when they sat down. So breakfast for me is the perfect meal. And you talked about measuring things in baking. You have to do the same thing with pancake batter. I would make the batters because the guys in the kitchen, if you said a tablespoon of baking soda or powder, they would dig in and get a heaping, and then they would put it in, and there was never consistency. So I would make the batters. That's what makes a perfect pancake. You also have to remember that a lot of the young chefs now grew up on Doritos and Cheetos, and they have a different tolerance for intense flavor. And I wanted to be sure that all the flavors were exactly in the middle where people could add spice to it or syrup to it or not. That's very important to me. I get palate fatigue when I eat a lot of food from the new young chefs. It's just overwhelming how much they're putting into it, and it just doesn't do it for me. So that's what makes great. Great means consistency, and great means perfect every time.
It's funny. I remember, and just to remind people, that there is a documentary that they can find on Amazon on Ina. It's called Breakfast at Ina's.
And I think they'll love it. I think they will love it.
It was enjoyable. I was sort of teary-eyed towards the end. And I know you were. It was like the documentary covers like the last 20 days. There were
the last month days. I was open, yes.
And you serving the last meal. But I remember you saying something about the 18 minutes. And also there was a video I watched of you in the 18 minutes. And then I start thinking, from the kosher home, it's high. It's 18.
18. I don't think I didn't notice that.
Yeah. But that was, the order was in, and the theme was, comes in, it has to be in front of them within 18 minutes. Mm-hmm. Or at 18 minutes.
From the time they place the order. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you something about eggs. There's some controversy about keeping your eggs out on the counter versus eggs refrigerated. And I'm sure that you went through enough eggs that there was never time for anything sitting out. Can you give any insight about eggs sitting out on the counter?
The answer to that question has to go back one step. When I heard about the amount of salmonella that could be in a dozen eggs, 1 egg out of every 12 could give you salmonella, I had also heard about pasteurized eggs. So pasteurized eggs, they put it through a special proprietary water bath of some kind. It comes off the bath. They spray it with a very fine grade food wax, and then it's good. And what it does is it kills all the bacteria inside and on the shell. And then because the wax is sealed, it nothing is going to get in. And when I saw the amount of pregnant women that we had and elders with immune compromised systems, we immediately went to pasteurized eggs. And that way I felt confident and comfortable because you could eat them raw and you will not get sick from them. So I have very strong feelings about that. Unfortunately, Michael's Eggs in Minneapolis said they were going to bring out they bought the company that had it, and I haven't seen it around yet. But the problem is that the egg whites don't whip very well, and you really have to go after it. But that was a really important point for me, excuse me, that I needed to know that the eggs were safe. I cannot speak to keeping them out. I know farm fresh eggs people do and leave it out on the counter. I will take my eggs out if I'm going to make something for breakfast or for dinner with eggs. I will let the eggs come to room temperature before I'll use them. But I do not leave them out. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. I truly don't know.
But you feel safer doing it the way that you do.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And in the documentary, you were really ahead of your time with just working with local vendors, not the big Cisco, not the big, and keeping the money within the territory. And, I'm not sure, people saying buying local, but I mean, you did this a ways back. This was almost at the beginning. Are there any tricks of the trade when people are doing breakfast that you can advise people of?
Tricks of the trade. Yes. And one of the first things I always think about is when people come in with children. The servers always took the orders for the children first and put them in immediately. Because when the food came out for the children, the parents have to cut or get ready and the children eat slowly. And then afterward, then the parents' food came out, so it was always hot. That's a trick. And that requires observation, and that requires a lot of thought.
And another thing that I picked up is how to beat an egg. You had a suggestion on that.
Well, you never do it this way because the yolk will run around.
So you do it sideways.
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 Always sideways, right?
Okay. I'm reading my notes. We've covered a lot of these things.
Yes.
Yes. Now, you've had a very interesting, challenging life in many ways, many ways. And most of the people who are watching this or will watch this have no comprehension of polio. It was 1944 that you got polio?
44, Labor Day, 1944. My father came in to take me out of the crib, and I tried to stand up, and I couldn't. And when he touched my forehead, he knew instantly that the polio epidemic that was sweeping New York City had come to Brooklyn. And that began a very early life of difficulty. I couldn't play. I was in braces from the March of Dimes. Some people watching may know the name Sister Kenny. She was an Australian nurse who came over here to try to show her system of treatment. Never said she had a cure, but a treatment. And my father called every hotel in New York until he found her and begged her to come to our apartment, which she did ultimately, and wouldn't get out of the car until our family doctor was with her and he escorted her in. So it was really quite a big deal that my father did that. So yeah, growing up with polio was terrible, was just terrible. I was always told that having a disability was a fate worse than death. And I found that out because I would sit with the adults. So I learned adult conversation, and I also learned to be a committed listener at that age, at 6. And I knew then when they said they were taking me to the hospital, I thought they were taking me to die. And I knew then that I had to figure out a life. Because whatever this was I was living every day, I thought I was getting 6 of them, whereas the man they talked about yesterday got 49 of them. And so whatever this was, and I made a promise to myself that if I got through the surgery, that I would create a life for myself that was different than what I saw around me. And I did.
I think you had your mind made up. You're a very determined person. And I think that comes through with how you trained your staff at the restaurant. And there was sensitivity training that your staff went through.
We were the most integrated restaurant in Chicago when we opened. And you would go to any restaurant in Chicago, you would never see Black faces, you would never see Hispanic faces, you would never see Asian faces. And in my restaurant, it was all at one time, all. And so I had to be sure that I trained my staff that there was a different way of approaching a table. I had a wonderful young woman who could not stop saying when she got to a table, "How you guys doing today?"
Oh,
And no matter what I did, no matter how I begged and trained and everything else. And one day she came at the end of the service. I said, "Monica, can I talk to you?" And she said, "Sure." I said, "You remember the women at table 34? And she said, "Yes, there were 4 of them and they were so nice." And I said, "Well, you walked up to them. You said, 'How are you guys doing today?' One of them was the Chief Justice of the Illinois Supreme Court, and the other 3 were judges. Today is your last day."
I have to tell you, my friends would tell you that is my pet peeve. I hate being called you guys, and I am infamous for something. Somebody said, "You guys." I said, "Excuse me, I don't have the equipment to go with that title."
I'm with you. I'm really
You know,
fussy about that.
you can just say, "How is everything going?"
Hello.
Hello.
I know.
It's very simple. But
Hello,
you
welcome
guys,
to Ina's, right. It's the other
right.
one that gets me crazy is, "Are you still working on that?" At the end. And I look at them and say, the chef would be so insulted if he heard you say that.
Well, I think one of the things about sensitivity that I saw on one of your interviews, and it's apropos to this in the sensitivity training that you personally gave, was that should a Black family or a Black couple or a Black person come into the restaurant and the restaurant's empty, do not sit them in the back of the restaurant.
It's always the back of the bus.
Right. Please show. Now, I also want to tell folks that I said you're a very determined person. In your youth, you saw this man and you went in your mind, "I'm going to marry him."
And I did.
And you did.
And I did. Remember when I said I was going to forge my own path? So
right.
I married a Black man in the 60s, and my family rejected me for 10 years after that. We decided we were living in the village. We did everything that we wanted to do. I grew up with Bill. Bill's an extraordinary human being. He's the first Black sailor to sail around the world solo. He was just inducted into the National Sailing Hall of Fame, which is the whitest organization on the planet.
Right.
And he was the first Black sailor. And we never forgot why we loved each other. And we still have the most extraordinary and wonderful, respectful and loving connection. He'll be in Chicago next week, and I can't wait to see him.
You're very involved. You have your column. You're very involved with the Rotary and about post-polio. And I think there was a speech that you just gave. Can I ask you to give that? I think it'll be quite moving for people to hear.
That would be absolutely wonderful. I speak to Rotary all over the country, and yesterday I did a podcast in Canada because polio is a big initiative with the Gates Foundation and Rotary, and we're trying for the global eradication. And considering in 1982 there were 350,000 cases in the world, not in our hemisphere, and last year there were 25. So we're on our way down really good. And when I talk to Rotary, my first job is to tell them my story and to talk about post-polio, but mostly I want to thank them for every dollar and every hour they have spent. So I decided that I was going to write myself a little letter to my 6-year-old self. And this is what I tell them, which covers everything. "My dear Ina, you're going to begin your life in the hardest way you can imagine. Polio at 18 months, which will lead to a childhood being marginalized, ignored, ostracized, and bullied. You will learn your first lesson when you understand that you are kinder than those around you. Your father will be the one who instills in you that you only have to get up one more time than you fall. And he will always be there to part another Red Sea of impossibility. You will marry Bill Pinkney, who will be famous for sailing around the world solo. And when you understand his best life will be spent on the sea and yours on land, divorce him 36 years later. You will each leave the marriage better people than when you began it, and neither of you will ever forget why you loved each other. Your life experiences will read like a novel and seem a dream to many. You will hang out with Maya Angelou in Greenwich Village, dance with Fred Astaire, go skydiving, Class 10 whitewater rafting and scuba diving. Ski the Alps and the Rockies on your one good leg. Feed Julia Child, Wolfgang Puck, and most Chicago chefs who will grow before your eyes and make this city a world-class food destination. You'll wipe the brow of Mikhail Baryshnikov in the wings of the ballet. You will experience great kindness from Anthony Bourdain. Appear on a global live stream on World Polio Day to speak about the Global Polio Eradication Initiative for the Gates Foundation and Rotary, and Bill Gates will follow you on Twitter. You will try hard to find your place in corporate America, having 21 jobs and getting fired from 19 of them, but learning something from each one you will need and use later. You will be fearless, Ina, but never reckless, and always see yourself as the causative agent in your story, never the victim. You'll bake your first cake at age 37 and find a strange and exciting joy in that. From that one cake, you'll build a baking kitchen, teach yourself how to bake, and create a dessert catering business in 1980 when that does not exist. You'll open your restaurant in 1991 at age 48 and realize there is great power in being underestimated. Ina's Kitchen will change the landscape of breakfast forever in Chicago, and it will matter. You will ultimately be known as an entrepreneur way ahead of her time, who created the smoking ban in Chicago, co-founded the Green Restaurant Coalition, and found a recipe for success in compassion, exacting standards, and sheer willpower. Ina's Kitchen will become a theater piece and a stage upon which the Ina will be reborn. Every life-changing experience you will have, every person you will meet, the family of choice you will assemble will enter through that door. You'll try with all your might to fit in and, like most polio survivors, pass for normal for many years until the late effects of polio take their toll, first with a brace, then a cane, then a walker, and now with a scooter. After a 33-year career that will bring you much joy and heartache, you will find your exit strategy and pivot to new and exciting ways to use your knowledge and experience. You will write a memoir cookbook, Ina's Kitchen, Memories and Recipes from the Breakfast Queen. You will be the subject of an award-winning documentary called Breakfast at Ina's on Amazon. You will write a monthly column in the Chicago Tribune about breakfast, Breakfast with Ina. Companies will hire you to speak at conferences about breakfast. You will finally get to eat breakfast. What you will love the most are the relationships that will sustain you, especially when you are invited to speak and share your story. And you will accept it because you will feel the grace of all you have tried to accomplish, and you're not 6 years old and no longer afraid that you will never belong. That's my life. That's my amazing, amazing life. And I closed the restaurant because I couldn't walk anymore. And if you can't work the room, which is what I was known for, you can't have the restaurant.
Right. You wear your heart on your sleeve for people, and you have a lot of heart. And I think the heart was a symbol at Ina's. Am I correct? Was it not on the mug? And what your
the apostrophe in the Ina's. Yeah.
Was a heart.
It was a heart.
Right. You're known. You have some great quotes that came out.
Here it is.
Okay. Got it. And there's the book, everybody. There we go. And quotes. I am looking here. You've made some very profound quotes. Love is spoken here.
Mm-hmm.
Life is short. Love is rare. It takes more energy to be afraid than it does to be courageous.
That's my true motto.
Powerful words.
Mm-hmm.
So you wrote a letter to your 6-year-old self, but if you were to go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
I think I did everything that I set out to do, which only meant to follow my heart. And if it was the wrong path that I was on, just to get off it as fast as I could. You always know if you walk into a room, a party, you've been invited to a dinner, and the thought crosses your mind, what am I doing here? You're in the wrong place. It's better to go home and be alone than to be in that space. And I always would check in with myself. My advice to myself is really what I did. But I learned very early that I would have no other life if I just followed the path of an upper middle class Jewish woman. I could never have done what I have done if I had just followed that path.
Right. All right. If you woke up tomorrow morning with a new talent, what would it be?
Oh, I would be a sniper. I know. My dream when I was little was to be either a doctor or a sniper, and I couldn't get into med school because they didn't take disabled women in the 50s, so that was going to be out. And I couldn't take regular gym when I got to college, and they made me take either football theory or riflery, and I took riflery, and of course I was the top of the class, so I know I have that ability. Yeah, I'd be a sniper. Every time I see it on TV, I go, oh yeah, I could do that. Only for good. Only for good, to take the bad guys out.
Okay. Well, there's plenty of them, but we won't go there at the moment. Your most epic culinary fail?
I think it was those first cakes, those first 3 chocolate mousse cakes. I could not believe that I couldn't do this. And it's because I was cutting corners and doing things I thought. But then when I read it and took it in and understood it, making that cake was the beginning of my career. But boy, epic fail for the first 3.
Yeah. I do have a question that's come in, well, a recommendation. If you were going to recommend a breakfast destination in Chicago and New York, where would it be?
In Chicago, I've been going to Mortar and Pestle, this delightful young man who's got a remarkable palate, and he's global in his understanding of ingredients and flavor profiles. His name is Chef Stephen Ross. And I go to Mortar and Pestle. He's only open 4 days a week now. And I just love what he does. I just love it. He made a breakfast fried rice. And tell me how many of us haven't taken home some fried rice and then sort of heated it up for breakfast with an egg on it. But he's taken it to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. And in New York, I used to go to Sarah Beth's kitchen when I was there. But now I don't know. Now I don't know.
Things have changed, but
everything has changed.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a question I didn't ask you that I should have?
Yes. Yes. How did I get the title Breakfast Queen?
Well, Ina, how did you get the title Breakfast Queen?
I gave it to myself. I thought it was a great marketing tool. Somebody said, you've taken breakfast to a whole new level. It's like you're royalty, breakfast royalty. And I went, oh, the Breakfast Queen. Oh, I think I got it.
But you have won many awards.
Yes.
I remember we were talking earlier when I was in Chicago for Women Chef and Restaurateurs, you were given the Golden Whisk Reward. And there's been many, many other awards to go. Ina, a joy, a pleasure. And I wouldn't say you guys.
You guys did a great job today.
You guys did a great job. I mean, if you could, my friends, whoever hears this, almost get embarrassed because they know it's coming out of my mouth. Thank you so much. Good health.
And to you, and to you. It was so lovely to be able to sort of go back and tell the history and the story, because I don't often get to talk about that. Thank you so much.
It was my joy. And let me sincerely thank you.
Excellent. The sincerity got to me just then.
All right, Ina, big was.
Come to Chicago, please. Come to Chicago. We'll have breakfast.
It sounds like a plan.
Thank you, Dara.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone. I have a couple other announcements to make. Next week's guest is Laurie Boucher. She is an attorney turned pasta instructor. Laura's passion is pasta. and she teaches all forms of pasta making privately and in local businesses in and around Baltimore, Ocean City, and other local seaside venues. Laura teaches some of her unique pasta classes as an adjunct professor at Anne Arundel Community College, and is also a staff pasta instructor at the Baltimore Chef Shop, the Kitchen Studio Cooking School, and the Pandola Learning Center in Little Italy. Also, a reminder that Jay Moore's J-Biz on Tuesday, June 7th at 5 p.m. is going virtual. Considering that things have spiked with COVID, they're taking it very simply online, just like our show. You would go to J Moore Living Facebook and /J Moore Living, and that would be Tuesday, 5 p.m. on June 7th. And the featured speakers will be Brett Cohen of Kitchen Saver, Emma Snyder of the Ivy Bookshop, Jason Perlow of Perlow Home Team, Matt Levinson of Sal Levinson Brothers, and Thibaut Mannequin of Seawall Development. So you can find the information on jmoreliving.com, look at events, and all the details will be there. Thank you for watching The Food Enthusiast. We appreciate when you share the shows with family and friends. There are over 100 interviews you can watch or listen to in our archives. Should you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com, or my social on Instagram is @DaraCooks. Enjoy your week. We will be back here next Thursday, same time, same place. As always, may your plates always, always remain full.